There are books that entertain you, and then there are books that remind you of why stories matter in the first place. Today, I want to recommend a book that does both, and it does something rare. It argues through narrative itself that storytelling is not just decoration, but survival. This is The Last Cuentista by Donna Barba Higuera, a Newbery Medal winner, and honestly, one of the most beautiful defenses of stories that I've read in a really long time. Welcome to Shelf Aware, the little corner of BookTube where we take books seriously, but not ourselves. And today's recommendation hits right at the heart of what I'm trying to build with this channel, and that is a love for reading that isn't about flexing or trends or pretending that we've read everything, but rather it's about attention and wonder and the quiet power of story. Let me give you the simplest possible sense of what this book is about. In it, we meet a girl named Petra Peña, who comes from a family where stories matter, where her abuela is a storyteller or a cuentista. And then the world ends. A comet destroys Earth, and Petra is one of the few chosen to leave on a ship that is headed toward a new planet, a last attempt to preserve the human race. But when Petra wakes up after hundreds of years, she discovers that something is wrong, that she may be the only one who remembers Earth at all. Because during the journey, a group called the Collective decided that humanity's past was just too dangerous, so they tried to erase it. And Petra is left holding something priceless, the memory of who we are, and with it, maybe the hope of who we could yet become. Well, look, here's what the book's really about. It's about the idea that when you lose your stories, you lose part of yourself. Because stories aren't just entertainment. They're memory, they're identity. They hold warnings, they provide hope, they communicate wisdom. They tell us what we've done, what we've survived, and what we should never, ever become again. And Petra, in many ways, becomes a librarian of the soul. She is the last storyteller. She is the last cuentista. So let me offer a few reasons that I think that this novel is worth the read. For one, it's short, but it's not small. It is a middle grade novel, which means it reads quickly, but don't let that fool you. You see, some of the deepest books in the world are short books, and this one is layered. It's accessible, but it's not shallow. Secondly, it honors cultural memory. This book takes the storytelling tradition very seriously. The role of the abuela, the power of oral history, and it reminds us that there are things that you just can't store on a hard drive. Some things have to be carried in a human voice. Thirdly, it is hopeful without being naive. This isn't despair fiction. It deals with the end of the world, but it doesn't worship darkness. It acknowledges what humans can do when we forget. And then it insists that remembering is still possible. And lastly, it made me think about reading itself. Like, if you've ever wondered whether or not stories matter, or if stories are worth telling or listening to, this book answers that question without being didactic. It tells you a story that makes you grateful that stories exist. I recommend this book. If you're a reader who loves stories about stories. If you're a teacher who wants something meaningful that isn't necessarily heavy. If you're a parent who's looking for a great book to share with one of your kids. Someone who believes that imagination isn't childish, but rather human. Or honestly, if you're anybody who has ever been saved by a story that you heard at just the right time. Let me say this very clearly. This book is not a book that is trying to be edgy or cynical. It's not built on shock value. It's built on a much older and rarer conviction, and that is that stories can make us better. Look, I'm a fan of big, deep, meaningful books, right? I like big books. I like epic fantasies. I like classics. But then you get a book like this that comes along and reminds you that a simple story can carry the weight of generations. Some people don't need a 900-page tome to be challenged. You just need a girl who refuses to let the world forget what it means to be human. So yeah, I recommend The Last Cuentista. If you're looking for a book that celebrates stories and the people who tell them, it's this one. So let me ask you a question. What story have you read recently that changed you? Was it a book, a movie, a myth, maybe something from the Bible, a bedtime story that you told your kids? What is it that helped you become who you are? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Maybe I'll read one of your recommendations. If you enjoy this kind of quiet recommendation, then consider subscribing. And welcome to Shelf Aware.